What's up guys, welcome to the fourth part of What If Team Aqua sponsored May. If you haven't seen part 3, it can be found on Pickled Dill's channel, linked to the series playlist in the iCard above. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe to both channels so you never miss out on a part.
Also, this part marks the halfway point of our story, so be sure to stick around to the very end, since we have some major announcements about the series moving forward that you won't want to miss. But with that said, let's get on to the story.
Several hours have passed since the disastrous end of the Rubello contest. We find May deep in thought. Despite her best efforts, she has not been able to stop replaying the final battle over in her mind, with guilt and shame welling up in her each time she imagines Weasel's brutalized face. But this is not the worst of it. What cuts even deeper than these feelings is a horrible realization. If she had to do it over, she would make the same choice, even knowing the consequences. What she did for her family, and as she sees herself reflected in the crystal mark, dressed in her Team Aqua uniform, she knows that there is nothing she would not do for her family. While May has been reflecting on her life choices, Isabel has taken the helm in regards to their journey, making them keep up the march even long after night has fallen. Her reasoning for this is two-pronged. The first being after what May did, she thinks it prudent that they put as much distance between themselves and Rubello Town as possible, in case Lizabeth and her family decide to come back for revenge. The other is that during the contest, she received instructions from Archie to rendezvous with another pair of Team Aqua agents at a Pokemon Center a few towns over, and in his usual impatient way, he barely gave him any time to get there. However, even Isabel's forced to call it a night when thick clouds cover the moon, obscuring any light they might have to guide them. Bunking down under a tree, the tactical commander tells May to do likewise, with the girl wordlessly complying, the thump of her body against the wood being the only sign that she even heard. Isabel doesn't like to see her companion so despondent, remembering how she acted after the incident on the yacht. But even then, she had enough spunk to challenge her about Archie. Now she's just lifeless, kinda like how she was after her Mudkip died. Maybe this will be for the girl's own good, and she will finally accept the true nature of this world, just as Isabel had to. She can only hope that this pain has a point and isn't just meaningless suffering, since there's enough of that already.
With these gloomy thoughts, Isabel drifts off to sleep. Though May does not. How could she after all she did today? Looking up the ink-black sky, she finds it unchanging and uncaring, without even the stars to light her way. If she were a Pokemon poet like Max's old hero Professor Oak, she might have considered this to be some sort of metaphor for her situation. But instead, she merely sees the probability of this being a wet night, as well as a windy one, that she will have to endure on her own. As if they can hear her thoughts, Swampert and Swablu burst from their balls, each looking concerned for their trainer, but with a sigh, May urges them to get back in their balls, since there's no need for all three of them to have to brave this weather. Rumbling in a low, comforting tone, Swampert lays its head against May's lap, like it used to as a Mudkip, its counterpoint clear, and there is no need for you to have to brave it alone. Swablu clearly agrees with its teammate, landing on May's shoulders and draping its warm puffy wings around her neck like a scarf. A moment later the predicted rain comes, bucketing down upon the trio, with the whipping winds making their tree cover next to useless. Once more, May suggests that her Pokemon friends return to their nice dry balls, but both Swampert and Swablu are resolute. Whatever comes, they will face it together like always. Briefly, May considers pressing the issue, but then in spite of herself, a small smile curls the edge of her lips, and as she pulls her partners in closer, she finally relents, saying that alright, she guesses they can be wet and cold together.
Meanwhile, a very familiar Spoink finds itself in similarly dire straits, the wind lashing at it just like the sands of the desert, while the chilling rain beats down on it just as oppressively as the scorching sun once did. Had its savior not found it that day, it would have likely have died in that dreadful place. But she had, and now it follows her, eager to pledge its service to the human with the kind heart. Finally, after much bouncing, so much bouncing, Spoink senses her aura at last, huddle under a tree with her Pokemon companions. This is its chance. All it has to do is approach her, and she will surely see its dedication and grant it a place on her team. However, fate is never so kind, as by now the ground has become slick and muddy from the rain, meaning that when Spoink takes an over-eager bounce, it slips on the mud and crashes snout first into the ground ground as its pearl rolls away. On instinct, the Esper pig uses its psychic abilities to right itself and recalls its precious pearl, though only when the deed is done that it realizes the error of its decision. Still huddled against the tree, Mei and her Pokemon suddenly see a blue glowing silhouette emerge from the darkness. And we're still a glowing orb moving in their general direction? An ambush! Springing into action, Swampert slams its thick paws onto the ground, creating a jagged crack in the earth that shoots towards the unknown assailant. And squealing in terror, Spoink is forced to leap away. This unfortunately leaves it exposed to Swablu's follow-up round, which uses the crack in the ground to magnify its acoustics into a far-spanning area of effect. As a result, Spoink is sent flying, crashing into the ground in front of its attackers. And as its glow finally fades, everybody realizes who it is.
Horrified, Mei calls a halt to this onslaught, pulling Spoink in and checking on it. Despite its injuries, the little Esper pig can't help but snuffle happily. Such a kind human. Thankfully, Spoink only has a small scrape on its snout from the initial rough landing, and knowing that Isabel carries several bottles of super potion, Mei decides to borrow one to fix this up in an instant. When this is done, the psychic type is as good as new, though to its surprise, Mei does not welcome it into her team as it had expected, instead placing it back on the ground like she did after their desert expedition, and telling it to be safe. Bewildered at this turn of events, Spoink reaches out psychically to the girl. While it is not yet powerful enough to speak telepathically, it can convey emotion, and so transmits its confusion, as well as feelings of rejection to Mei, the question clear. Smiling sadly, Mei unconsciously emits a wave of sorrow as she tells Spoink that while she thinks it's a great Pokemon, she's afraid she can't bring it with her. Snuffling indignantly as if to ask why not, Spoink is met by a pat to the head, as Mei sighs that her path isn't one a Pokemon as innocent as it should walk, and that it should find a good, kind trainer for itself, not whatever she's become. Such intense self-loathing flows out from Mei at these words that Spoink springs back in fright, and as she watches it go, Mei feels some small relief. No matter how much of a piece of filth she's become, she's still at least decent enough not to drag someone else down with her. She wishes she could spare Swampert and Swablu too, but they have already made it clear that they're with her till the bitter end. So if that's how it's gonna be, they'll walk this dark road together, doing whatever is required of them to get Max back. If she can just save his soul, then it will have all been worth it, even if her own is lost forever.
Following the success of his Izabi Island gym battle, Max returns to the Pokemon Center, where Courtney is waiting for him. The girl has been conspicuously absent for both the battle and Blaziken's treatment, but Max doesn't care. It's not like they're friends. He's only tolerating her presence since that's what Maxie wants. And speaking of Maxie, the son of Norman is surprised to see his face besides Courtney's. Unfortunately, this is only through the screen of a video phone, but all the same, Max is happy to see his mentor, barging his way to Courtney's side and greeting him with a warm smile, a smile cresting his own lipless break of a mouth. Maxie acknowledges the boy, asking how his gym battle went, and when Maxie holds up the chill badge, Maxie praises him, saying this is well done indeed. This clearly irritates Courtney, who attempts to get the Magma boss's attention back on her, but when he politely tells her to wait one moment, she falls silent, glaring daggers at Max. Though he gives no sign of it, Maxie's pleased to see this, having feared that perhaps instead of competing for his love, the two children might have used their time traveling together to bond. But as usual, his genius is proven peerless, with Max and Courtney having only become more isolated and desperate for his attention, now that they know a rival exists who can take it away from them at a moment's notice. However, he must not overplay this card, for if one of them feels like the other is being truly favored, it may cause them to start resenting him. Yes, he will only keep them together a little while longer. Thankfully, a little while is more than enough time to complete his present objective. After a moment of small talk with Max to whet his appetite for affection, in which he explains that the Space Center investigation was a bust, with Tate Liza's family seemingly being more concerned with the imminent arrival of the so-called Millennium Comet than the Blue Orb. Maxie returns his focus to both his subordinates, telling them that it is at last time to reveal the full details of their joint mission. Max and Courtney listen intently at these words, eagerness to please written both on their faces. Smiling, Maxie explains that they're about to infiltrate the Weather Institute near Fortree City and steal their data on Groudon and Kyogre, since it's one of the only reliable repositories of information on the subject. Understanding the importance of this job, Max gives a salute saying that he won't let Maxie down, while Courtney does likewise, before asking which one of them will be in command of the mission.
It is a standard question, as one operative is always nominated as field commander to simplify decision-making authority during missions. However, Maxie cannot help but see the golden opportunity the girl has given him to ensure that this pair remain rabid in their rivalry, and so after a look of feigned consideration, tells the kids to decide amongst themselves, saying they are his two best operatives, and he wouldn't feel right expressing less trust in one than the other. He then bids them goodnight and hangs up the phone, waiting until he is certain they cannot hear him, then allowing himself a small laugh. Back in the Pokemon Center, Max and Courtney glower at each other, both feeling as though the other has stolen the chance for them to prove themselves to Maxie. Scowling, Courtney states that obviously she should be field commander, since she has seniority, but Max protests this, saying that a leader has to be strong, and as the vastly superior battler, command should naturally fall to him. Courtney, it seems, takes great umbrage with this assertion, letting out a haughty laugh as she asks in what world the Maxie wannabe thinks he's a better battler than her. Gritting his teeth, Max replies if the pink-haired girl is so sure of her strength, why not make that the way they decide who leads the mission? A suggestion Courtney begrudgingly accepts, storming off to the battlefield out the back of the center, with Max on her heels. Having arrived at the battlefield first, Courtney brings out her Pokemon, and it is her newly caught Mightyena. For a moment, Max thinks he has this in the bag, grabbing hold of Blaziken's ball, but then he remembers that Blaziken hasn't had a chance to rest or be healed from its battle with Rocky, and so reluctantly relinquishes his hold, deciding to go with Plan B, another Pokemon who can land super effective hits on Mightyena, Pineco. Courtney is surprised to see the skittish Pinecone, but all the same, she has no intention of sitting back and letting Max win, and so tells her Mightyena to use Crunch. Snarling ferociously, Mightyena leaps forward and clamps its jaws around the bug type. However, this is rather ill-advised, as just like it has done every other time it has been startled, Pineco responds with an instinctive self-destruct. As one would expect, having a live grenade go off in its mouth is a fairly unpleasant experience for Mightyena, who is flung back into the wall of the Pokemon Center, where it leaves an imprint before flopping to the ground unconscious. This move does of course also force Pineco to faint, but not until after Mightyena, technically rendering Max the winner.
Courtney does not want to accept these results, demanding that they use more Pokemon since the match was a tie, but Max protests that Pineco did win, and while the Bagworm Pokemon is able to rise to its feet after a moment, Mightyena still remains out cold. The girl is forced to accept this, acid in every word as she asks what their orders are. As it turns out, Max's plan is quite simple, waiting only long enough for Nurse Joy to heal up both their Pokemon before having them mount a Staraptor. The big bird is initially unwilling to take a passenger in the Team Magma garb, even biting at Courtney when she gets near, but knowing that Maxie would be mad if he just ditched Courtney, Max approaches his dad's old friend and wraps it in a hug, pleading with it to do this for him. Truthfully, the normal flyer remains hesitant, but after some mental calculus, it lets out the huff of a relenting parent, and at last allows Courtney to clamber onto its back behind Max. Thanks to the impressive strength and speed of the gym leader trained Pokemon, Staraptor is able to get them to the mainland by sunrise. And though Max is sure it could probably take them further, he feels it deserves a rest and so decrees that they will proceed the rest of the way on foot. From here, it takes them a couple of days to reach the nearest piece of civilization, which is Fortree City. Though Max puts this time to good use, training every evening with his Pokemon, the scars of defeat from his battle with Hodge still fresh in his mind. Pineco receives particular attention during these training sessions, since while it is clearly high level, having been able to take out a pack of Mightyena all at once on the night it was caught, its anxious disposition hampers it, with it still exploding at the first sight of something unexpected, figuring that toughing it up through battle might help. Max has his other Pokemon do training matches with it one at a time. However, while this is a good idea in theory, in practice it always ends the same, with the bug typing getting startled and blowing up in its training partner's face. If he were back at the base, he could run some tests or consult Maxie for a way to overcome this twitchiness. But unfortunately, on the road, all he has is his own wits. And Courtney, he supposes. Though honestly, that is worth less than nothing, as she has returned to her old ways of walking as far away from him as she can, and only speaking to hurl some barb his way. This does at least give him an idea, however, as by watching her from afar, he wonders if he could do the same with Pineco, keeping it far away enough from danger that it doesn't feel afraid, but still in a position where it can help study its teammates as they battle. This does wonders for the little pinecone, with it quickly showing itself to have a keen analytical mind like Max himself, as it observes the other Pokemon's tactics and tries to evaluate them from the sidelines. Max is happy that he found a way to get through to his newest friend, but the question still stands, whether Pinecone will be able to put this new knowledge to use when push comes to shove.
Finally, Max and Courtney reach Four Tree City, stopping off at the Treetop Town's Pokemon Center to give their companions a rest after such a long trek. While they wait, Max watches the small center TV, just like he did with Maxie, glad of any excuse to ignore Courtney. Currently on screen is a talk show where a well-dressed man with a thin moustache and well-groomed black hair, aside from a tuft of white, is discussing his upcoming return to the stage at tomorrow's Lily Cove contest. At first, Max dismisses this as just another vapid coordinator, only to learn that this man is also a gym leader named Juan. This at last draws Max's attention, as he's heard that name before, but before he can make any more of this, the intercom chimes to tell Max his Pokemon are healed. With the Weather Institute being not too far away, the boy brings forth Staraptor as soon as he is back outside, climbing onto its back with Courtney and taking off into the air. However, it seems they are not the only air traffic this morning, as a peculiarly dressed woman mounted on Altaria soon flies level with them, and begins to call out to gain their attention. Cupping an ear to hear over the rushing wind, Max is able to make out the woman's question, whether this Staraptor is the same one that belonged to the Petalburg gym leader Norman. Max nods, yelling back that Norman was his dad, to which the woman replies that she thought so, citing a clear resemblance, before beckoning him to have Staraptor follow her. Wanting to know what this woman has to do with his father, Max does as he's bid, much to Courtney's anger, as she screams at him to focus on the mission and pounds her fists into his back. Ignoring the pink-haired girl, Max soon touches down in an open-air battlefield, where he finds the oddly dressed woman waiting. With a smile, she introduces herself as Winona, one of Norman's friends and colleagues, with Max doing likewise, before asking if that means Winona is a gym leader. Smiling, Winona nods, asking in turn if the boy is doing the gym challenge to honor his old man. In response, Max flashes his badge case, and Winona grins it's an impressive collection, suggesting if he'd like, he could try to add one more. That is if he thinks he can handle a flying-type team. Max smirks that he thinks he and his Staraptor are up to the task, patting the predatory Pokemon's side, and telling Winona to bring out her first Pokemon when she's ready. At this point, Courtney will stand no more, screaming at Max to forget his stupid little gym challenge and take her to the Weather Institute right now. However, Max refuses, saying the boss wants him to do the gyms, so he's gonna have his battle, and then they'll go to the Weather Institute. He then adds in a tone of coldness that radiates the same forcible as Maxie, that he is the field commander, so she will do as he says. In the wake of this, Courtney is at a loss for words, and so with a huff, she takes a seat in the stands, her mind darkly plotting all the ways she will highlight this dereliction of duty in her report to Maxie.
With this settled, Winona chooses the Altaria she was riding as her first Pokemon, while Max unsurprisingly does the same with Staraptor. While the Cloudbird is fast, Norman's old friend is faster, revealing a whole nother level of strength now that it is up against a true rival. With a mighty caw, Staraptor slams into Altaria, delivering a devastating aerial ace before switching to a takedown, which drops the part dragon type to the ground. Grinning approvingly, Winona comments that Staraptor's skills remain as sharp as ever under Max's care, but even still, her starter isn't out for the count, a claim that she quickly proves true as out of the dust cloud burst a powerful dragon breath. Being an unexpected attack, Staraptor only has a moment to dodge, allowing the beam attack to glaze off its wing, leaving a nasty burn mark behind. However, Staraptor is far too strong to be felled by a single attack, and so in spite of the pain, it stays airborne, cawing for Altaria to face it once more. Winona's response is to have the Cloudbird use Dragon Breath again, and knowing that range is not where Staraptor likes to fight, Max has it use Brave Bird to close the distance. At once, flames coat the normal flyer, which quickly transform into a blue energy as it shoots forward. With this new coating, Staraptor is easily able to split the Dragon Breath in half, zoning in on Altaria and crashing into it like a torpedo. Blue bioelectricity then races slices across Staraptor's body, signifying the recoil damage it has received. But this is a small price to pay, as when the dust cloud camouflaging Altaria finally fades, all can see that it is unconscious. Up next for Winona is her Pelipper, and wanting to end things quickly, Max has Staraptor use Brave Bird again. Once more, this hits hard, with the normal flyer taking its share of recoil damage as a result. But to Max's shock, Pelipper's bulky build allows it to endure the hit and fire back with the Hydro Pump. At point blank range, there's nowhere that Staraptor can go, being driven into the packed dirt of the battlefield. Urgently, Max cries out for his dad's Pokemon, and refusing to let its young charge down, Staraptor violently fights off the fatigue it is feeling and staggers back onto its feet. However, there is one problem that no amount of grit is able to solve: Staraptor's wet wings, which due to the dousing it received from the Hydro Pump are no longer able to support flight. Max and Staraptor know that a flightless bird is just a sitting Psyduck, though to his credit, Max does know one way he can dry off Staraptor. Looking at the predator Pokemon in the eye, Max asks rather than orders it to use Brave Bird. Gathering up the last remnants of its will, Staraptor sets itself ablaze, creating a steam trail behind itself that rapidly dries its wings, then uses them to take flight, striking Pelipper under the bill and momentarily staggering it. Seeing this opening, Staraptor pushes through the pain for a follow-up close combat, its talons flashing as it drives them into Pelipper's skull. Such a brutal assault is too much for the Pelican Pokemon, who falls unconscious. While above it, Staraptor lets out a triumphant caw. It will claim this win for Max and any other the boy needs. This is how it will honor its master, no, its friend, Norman, by being the wings that carry his son to his dreams.
With this pledge empowering it, Staraptor sets its steely gaze on Winona's final Pokemon, a shiny Swallow. Not wanting to force it to endure any more recoil damage, Max calls for an Aerial Ace, while Winona does likewise. At once the two birds soar each other, wings extended, but to Staraptor's horror, its speed simply cannot compare to its younger opponent, and so as its wing glances along the plumage of Swallow's underbelly, the shiny bird drives its own wing into Staraptor's windpipe for a devastating lariat that finally spells the end for the last living Pokemon from Petalburg Gym. From his side of the field, Max lets out a strangled scream. He's never seen one of his dad's Pokemon lose before, but here it is, Staraptor, lying on its back. Running over and cradling its head, Max desperately asks if it's okay, and to his relief, the battered flying type lets out a soft coo, placing a wing on the boy's chest, as if urging him not to worry, for at last fading into true unconsciousness, having well and truly earned its rest. Recalling it with his thanks, Max reaches for Chinchou's ball, but in his flustered state at the sight of Staraptor's defeat, he accidentally grabs hold of something very different. As a result, it is Pineco who emerges onto the field, with Max having to suppress a groan at the thought of how badly this is about to go. It seems that Pineco has a very similar thought as it frantically begins chattering at Max as if desperately trying to find out why he'd sent it out, and against a flying type of all opponents. However, to its credit, Pineco does not immediately explode, a heartening sign that suggests that perhaps watching all those battles did give it some confidence. Though, just how much is about to be tested, as with a blood-curdling shriek, Swallow descends upon the bagworm, looking at the bug type as if it is nothing but a delicious meal. This is too much for Pineco, who begins to glow as it instinctively initiates a self-destruct, but from behind it, Max pleads with the bug type not to, urging it to calm down and use its head, like it did during their time observing the training battles. This thankfully gets through to Pineco, and so marshalling all of its will, it holds the explosive energy inside, an act which clearly puts a lot of strain on the little Pinecone. This exertion also requires all its focus, making it a sedentary target for Swallow, who, sensing an easy win, closes in and slams its wing into Pineco's face. This causes Pineco to lose focus, but instead of its glow expanding out as an explosive force, it instead glows brighter, turning pristine white, as Max realizes that it is not exploding, it's evolving.
Suddenly, a steely shell forms around Pineco, or rather Fortress, and on instinct, the naturally timid Pokemon attempts to withdraw inside it for its own protection. This causes the upper and lower halves of the shell to clamp down hard on Swallow's wing, making it squawk in pain as it is unable to escape. This also renders the shiny bird flightless, a dangerous position to be in, and taking full advantage of the opportunity this brings, Max has his newly evolved Pokemon use Rapid Spin. At once, the steel bug begins to spin at high speeds, and being caught in its vice-like grip, Swallow is brought along for the ride. Even as a high flyer, the sudden centrifugal force is too much for the bird, with it making a distinctly discomforted noise. Though lucky for it, it is not forced to endure this for long, as the high speeds of the rapid spin finally manage to dislocate its wing, sending Swallow scraping painfully across the battlefield. Staggering to its feet, Swallow lunges back at Fortress with a peck, hoping to finish off the bug type with an easy move. However, as its beak makes contact with Fortress's rigid shell, Swallow is forced to contend with two very unfortunate facts. First, due to its newly acquired steel typing, Fortress is no longer vulnerable to flying type moves. And second, that Fortress now weighs roughly 6 times as much as its avian opponent. This second fact is brought to life as Max calls for a heavy slam, which due to the weight difference is enough to pancake Swallow into the dirt, where it remains with Spiral for eyes. This ends the match in Max's favor, and as soon as he has his badge, he runs over to Fortress, hugging it and thanking it for its amazing performance. Fortress seems just as delighted, Evolution having finally calmed its frayed nerves, though this doesn't stop it from using self-destruct one last time out of excitement. As Max lays spiraled on the ground, his face charcoaled and sooty, he can't help but laugh. He laughs and laughs until tears stream down his face. In this moment, he is truly happy.
After a very long walk, May and Isabel finally arrive at the Crossgate Town Pokemon Center, just in time to meet with their contact. Performing a cursory search of the center, neither can find anyone who gives the slightest indication of Team Aqua affiliation, though admittedly, May's investigation is somewhat hampered by a young reporter and a cameraman, who keep trying to pull her aside for an interview about her Rubello contest showing. May doesn't have time for such things, and even if she did, she doesn't want to talk about that final battle, and so politely, but firmly declines the offer. However, the reporter is insistent, asking again with a bit more force this time, and even grabbing hold of May's wrist when she tries to step away. Wondering what's wrong with this crazy lady, May calls out to Isabel for assistance, but when the tactical commander appears, she merely shakes her head and apologizes to the reporter, calling her Gabby. Frowning a little, Gabby replies that she thought they were told to keep a low profile, to which Isabel sighs that they were, but it seems May isn't very good at connecting dots. More confused than ever, May asks her companion what's going on, with Isabel replying that the pair of reporters are Gabby and Ty from Hoenn TV. At once, May's mouth falls open in a comical O, as everything clicks into place. She is aware of the fact that Hoenn TV is one of the fronts Team Aqua uses to conduct their more public-facing business, and in fact, the station is even listed as her official sponsor in the contest circuit. Though she had never thought about it, it stands to reason that she wouldn't be the only Team Aqua member linked to Hoenn TV, and so as she makes eye contact with Gabby, she asks what their mission is. Smiling now that the girl has caught on, Gabby responds by beginning her interview, praising the way May has taken the contest circuit by storm, for asking whether the Pokemon Activities Committee should institute a system similar to other regions, where coordinators can use different Pokemon between rounds. This is followed up by another question, about if May ever intends to catch a Steel-type Pokemon, and whether she'd ever date another coordinator. Wanting to make a good impression after how oblivious she was before, May quickly picks up on the code her colleague is using. They are to storm the Weather Institute and steal data, though data on what, May doesn't know.
Thankfully, Ty the cameraman is there to fill in that blank, as under the guise of playing back a part of the interview for May and Isabel, he shows them the screen on his camera which displays an image of Groudon and Kyogre. May isn't sure whether to feel inspired or afraid at this sight. On one hand, it means that Birch stayed strong and refused to give Archie what he wants. On the other, what state must he be in if Archie has been forced to turn to alternative sources of information after only a few days, adding these thoughts to her growing list of those she cannot risk contemplating for fear of cracking under pressure. May instead adopts a false smile, thanking the interviewers for their time, with Gabby in turn smiling that it was her pleasure, and that she trusts May will be at the Lily Cove contest. Nodding at this final instruction, May along with Isabel watch Gabby and Ty depart, before retiring to their rooms to plan for the operation. Being a high priority job that the two can't possibly possibly carry out on their own, Isabel elects to call in a squad of grunts. And so it is that rather than traveling to the Weather Institute on foot, May finds herself seated inside a helicopter along with a contingent of blue bandana clad Team Aqua members, all bearing the same mission: acquire the data at any cost. Touching outside the Institute, May goes into autopilot, charging in with the rest, and bringing out Swampert to help her surround the scientists and corral them into one place. When they are assembled, Isabel as mission leader speaks up, demanding that the head of the Weather Institute turn over the data on the ancient Pokemon, since if they do, no one needs to get hurt. From the center of the hostages, a man with a bubbly gray Pokemon on his shoulder defiantly declares that they will never hand over the data, since it's no longer in their database. They've already encoded it into their creation, an artificial Pokemon called Castform. Isabel calls this pity before whipping out her Remoraid and having it blast him in the chest with the full power water gun. Compared to the light dousing she gave May, this seems to do serious damage as the man is blown off his feet, slamming hard into the concrete ground, while from his shoulder the gray glob warbles in concern. Like all Pokemon, this comes in the form of its name, and none among the assembled group struggle to make out the name of this Pokemon: Castform. Realizing that this is now their target, Isabel orders a pair of grunts to grab the pile of goop, but Castform is faster, taking off into the air and dashing inside the Weather Institute building. On instinct, May says that she'll handle this, breaking rank with Swampert at her side and racing after the artificial Pokemon. The interior of the Institute is a maze of corridors, though it seems that none of them are Castform's true destination, as May spots the little blob clambering into one of the vents in an attempt to make a sneaky getaway. Pulling out Swablu's ball, the girl tells her cloud bird friend to follow after Castform, and to keep using its dissonant singing attack so she and Swampert can follow them. Nodding its understanding, Swablu soars into the vent, and as the sound of singing above them signals the way to May and Swampert, they give chase, ready to apprehend Castform as soon as it pops back into view.
To its credit, the artificial Pokemon is crafty, taking sharp turns and even popping out of the vents briefly, only to crawl back into other ones before May can have Swampert blast it with a hydro pump. However, Swablu's loyalty is more than a match for Castform's ingenuity, as it stays hot on the weather Pokemon's tail, singing all the while, and leading May deeper and deeper into the Weather Institute. Finally, Castform's luck does run out, however, as when it reaches the end of its current vent, it emerges to find itself in a small storage room with no other ventilation. At that moment, May and Swampert burst through the only door, while Swablu emerges from the vent, cutting off Castform's only means of retreat. This leaves it only one option: stand and fight. Recognizing Swablu as both the weaker of the two opposing Pokemon, and the only one it can deal super effective damage against, Castform makes the Cotton Bird Pokemon its target, though to do so requires a combo move. The first step of this is to create a hailstorm, and so channeling its weather manipulation powers, it causes a dark black cloud to bloom above its head, blanketing the ceiling lights, just as the storm after the Rubello contest did to the moon and stars. Then when the cloud has filled the room, thick white hailstones begin to pelt May and her Pokemon, or more surprisingly, Castform changes shape, gaining a puffy light blue cloak, kind of like a cumulonimbus cloud. However, May has little time to wonder at the beauty of this creature's form-changing ability, as her focus is entirely on Swablu, who seems particularly distressed by the hail. Though in a perversely merciful way, its suffering is not long-lasting, as a moment later, Castform unveils the second move in its strategy, Weather Ball, and due to the hail, this move manifests as a dense snowball which strikes Swablu head-on, dropping the cloud bird out of the air. Seeing a chance to escape and finally get away from these invaders, Castform dashes towards the open vent, but is stopped when Swampert deftly tackles it through a wall, sending Mudfish and Blob toppling into some sort of control room. As soon as they leave the hail-filled storage room, Castform reverts to its original appearance. Not wanting to let it get away, May recalls Swablu, then leaps through the hole in the wall. Upon seeing her, Castform once again attempts to flee, but this is just as unsuccessful as its last attempt, with Swampert intercepting it and blasting it back with Hydro Pump. Wanting to dry up the water type, Castform next uses Sunny Day, its body shifting again, though this time by gaining an orange hood with several small orange orbs lining it. As planned, this does lessen the power of water type moves, but there is one thing Castform failed to account for, that Swampert is also a ground type, meaning that when May calls for an earthquake, the ensuing pulse of seismic power that rocks through Castform is now super effective, sending it crashing down hard into a control panel, where it is electrocuted and rendered unconscious.
Running over to Swampert, May thanks her partner before looking over at the unconscious Castform and realizing that in her haste to catch up with the weather Pokemon, she failed to account for how she's gonna transport it back to Isabelle and the others. Though she could probably carry it, the little creature has already proven itself crafty, and after all the effort she put into catching it, she doesn't want to risk losing it and having to repeat the process. Then an idea hits her, a simple but effective idea which will ensure Castform stays where it's meant to. She could catch it. Though her reservations around catching more Pokemon remain, this isn't really a capture. More like she's transporting Castform since Archie will probably take it off her hands anyway. Figuring this is the most effective method of dealing with the little blob, May pulls out a Pokeball and taps the unconscious Pokemon on the head, converting it into red light and sucking it inside the ball. Then without a word, she and Swampert depart, eager to reunite with Isabelle and leave this place as soon as possible. After the long walk to Fortree, Max is relieved to be flying again. After their battle, while waiting for Nurse Joy to finish taking care of their Pokemon, Winona had given him some great tips on how to best sit on Staraptor to minimize the stress on its body and allow it to travel both faster and further. A welcome piece of advice, as what Max once thought were Staraptor's top speeds seem sluggish as it jets above the tree line. Courtney, for her part, is still sulking about the gym battle, though when the Weather Institute comes into view on the horizon, her devotion to Maxie snaps her back to attention, with the girl laying out a plan for how they can force the workers to hand over the data. Max, however, has other ideas, telling his pink-haired subordinate that instead of relying on brute force like some rampaging Tauros, they're gonna use their heads. While he knows that this will be a new experience for Courtney, he is certain it will prove more beneficial to their cause in the long run, since this way they can handle the operation just like how Maxie handled the Space Center infiltration, by posing as young researchers requesting a tour. Then once they're inside, they can do a bit of scouting, and once they find where the data is stored, he will sneak away and take a copy of it, with the workers being none the wiser. From her spot behind him on Staraptor, Courtney snarks that Max is a genius. He even prepared a flawless dweeby nerd disguise to blend in. Oh wait, he always looks like that. Scowling, Max tells her to cram it as they're about to land. Though what Max sees next wipes all thought of Courtney's barb from his mind. A Team Aqua helicopter parked right outside the Weather Institute. The people who killed his parents are here. Knuckles whitening as he grips Staraptor's feathers. Max growls at his dad's old Pokemon to get low enough that he and Courtney can leap off, then go on the attack, and to show no mercy to anyone wearing a bandana. Cawing its understanding, the bird of prey swoops low. Then when its two riders have disembarked, it becomes a flurry of feathers and fury, striking out with its beak, wings, and talons. Meanwhile, Max brings out the rest of his team, and in a voice shaking with hate, orders them to get those Aqua bastards, every last goddamn one of them.
The arrival of these unexpected new adversaries startles the assembled Aqua grunts, and as they turn their attention away from their prisoners to fight off Max's Pokemon, the captive weather scientists seize the opportunity and join the fray, wanting to drive off the blue-clad invaders. As their leader, the man who Isabelle blasted with Remoraid rushes over to Max and Courtney, thanking them for their timely assistance, for asking who they are and what they're doing here. As Max is preoccupied with his personal vendetta, Courtney decides to use this opportunity to take the glory, introducing herself as a representative for Team Magma, the true heroes of the region, despite what lies Hoenn TV may spread. The scientists here can thank Maxie for their rescue, and if they truly wish to show their gratitude, she would appreciate a copy of their research data, as it will be instrumental in the creation of a better Hoenn. A little nonplussed, the leader, who Courtney learns is named Bart, explains that their data is all stored in a Pokemon named Castform, so even if he could share it, he's afraid that currently Team Aqua are already pursuing it inside the Institute. Scowling, Courtney whistles at Max to stop playing stupid games and go get the Castform inside. But with a snarl, Max tells her not to boss him around, as he turns his attention to Isabelle, the clear leader of this group of Aqua scum, and his next target. Calling Blaziken over to him, the young Magma member tells it to use Sky Uppercut on the woman, but rolling out of the way, Isabelle strafes Blaziken with water guns from her Remoraid, while seemingly out of nowhere, her Ludicolo appears behind the fiery fowl, and binds it with Giga Drain. Green bioelectricity then crackles from the tendrils, and in spite of Blaziken resisting grass-type attacks, there is a reason this move is Archie's favourite implement of torture, with the Firestarter being swiftly brought to its knees by the sheer power of Ludicolo. Frantically, Max cries for his partner, running over to try and pull the draining tentacles off it, his love for it outweighing the hatred clouding his mind. However, he is stopped when a water gun to the knee from Remore drops him where he stands. A moment later, Blaziken falls as well, having been driven to unconsciousness by the Giga Drain, and with a dispassionate look on her face, Isabel approaches the incapacitated boy, readying one last water gun to the head to knock him out like his Pokemon. Though, before she can take the shot, something draws her attention. Whipping his head around, Max sees the familiar face of Mei running towards the Aqua Mob, a Pokeball held high above her head as she yells to Isabel that she's got Castform. Nodding approvingly, Isabel tells the brunette that she's done a good job, and as she gives the order to retreat, Max realizes what must be in the ball. No, he will not let Mei ruin everything. Propping himself up on his elbows and his one uninjured leg, Max begins to crawl towards Mei, spitting at her to come back here, to face him. But by now the Team Aqua contingent have already begun clambering back into the helicopter, the whirring of its blades drowning all sound. It is only when Mei turns around to take her seat that she sees her brother, beaten on the ground, but before she can leap from the craft and run to him, she is pushed into a sitting position by Isabel, so the helicopter can take off at last. With the fighting now done, Max's remaining Pokemon gather around their trainer, though he has eyes only for one of them, Staraptor, as he orders it to get back into the air and make Mei suffer for what she's done. However, with a stern look, the Predator Pokemon shakes its head, its refusal to hurt the daughter of its old master plain to see. By now the helicopter is too high in the air for any of his other Pokemon to have a chance of hitting it, and as he watches the skeletal A of Team Aqua vanish into the clouds, he screams to the heaven that he's going to destroy Team Aqua, and make each and every one of them pay.
Up in the helicopter, Mei is slumped in her seat. Max was right there. If she had just looked sooner, she could have gone to him. They could have talked about what happened that night at the gym, but now she's lost him all over again. This feels a million times worse than the aftermath of Rubello. And Mei doesn't say a word as day turns into evening and the ground below them transitions into sea. Finally, they touch down on the helipad of Team Aqua's headquarters. A vast complex built into one of the large rocky outcrops that darts the water just outside of Lily Cove. Archie is waiting for them by the entrance, and as the strike team clambers out of the helicopter, he claps them all on the back, congratulating them on a job well done. He then asks where the data is, to which Isabel informs him of Castform, while Mei hands over its ball, saying that she caught it to make the transfer easier. In a tone of surprise, Archie comments that it looks like her sweet little Cherubi is finally pulling her own weight. About time. He then laughs as though this is some in-joke between them, as before playfully ordering her to go get some beauty sleep, since she's shipping out again first thing in the morning to get her last ribbon. Wanting to capitalize on the good mood her loathsome boss seems to be in, Mei asks if she can visit Professor Birch first, and with a shrug, Archie tells her to go wild, informing her that he's in the basement under guard. So if this is one of her little schemes, she should save them both the trouble and just skip it. Ignoring the implied threat, Mei does make her way down to the basement, and upon telling the guards that Archie gave her permission to visit the prisoner, she is led inside. What Mei finds inside is a small windowless room that is half prison cell, half workstation. And when he hears the door open, Birch rises from his desk to see who it is. From what Mei can tell, the professor has had a rough time of it since coming here, with several bruises dotting his face, while his clothes show signs of damage. Though when he spots his guest, his face lights up, and he runs to wrap the girl in a hug. Guilt floods Mei at what her uncle must have endured for her, but when she goes to apologize, he gently shushes her, telling her not to worry about him, he's fine. What he really wants to know is if she's okay, and if she's any closer to finding Max.
Tears well in Mei's eyes at this, and in a small voice, she tells Birch about the Weather Institute and how she had a chance to save Max but missed it. Soothingly, Birch reassures Mei that this isn't her fault, but Mei won't hear of this, blaming herself not only for this, but for Team Aqua's success at the Weather Institute, revealing how she was the one who chose to abduct Castform, just like she chose to hurt Elizabeth's weasel in order to win a ribbon. She then breathes that she's done so many bad things for Team Aqua that it's becoming easy, and she's scared. Scared she's becoming more like Archie and the rest of Team Aqua, that deep down, she's really a bad person. Crouching slightly so that he can meet her eyes, Birch assures May that she isn't a bad person at all, but with a hint of defiant self-loathing, May asks how he can say that after hearing what she's done. Smiling paternally, the professor replies that it's because he can also hear the remorse she feels for her actions, and the weight hurting others has put on her conscience. Two things he knows for a fact Archie doesn't feel. She has made mistakes, yes, but so long as she tries to be better and holds tight to that compassion in her heart, then she will never be a bad person. By now, tears are well and truly running down May's cheeks, and with a tender motion, Birch pulls his niece back into his embrace, allowing her to weep without judgment. When her sobs have finally subsided a little, he speaks once more, the rumbling of his chest reminding May of how her father would comfort her when she was little. In a regretful tone, Birch sighs that the situation May has found herself in is dreadfully unfair. She's a child who's been forced to carry burdens most adults couldn't. And worst of all, it is not of her making, but the result of cruel and selfish people far more powerful than herself. He's sorry he didn't protect her and Max from them like he should have, that he wasn't there when they needed him, but he promises that won't be the case anymore. One day, she and Max will be reunited. All this awfulness will be behind them. He doesn't know when, but he knows the day will come, and when it does, he'll be there, doing everything in his power to provide them both with all the love and support they need.
May doesn't know what to say to this, but it is clear that Birch doesn't need words to understand what the girl is feeling, giving her a smile and allowing her to respond however she will at her own pace. For her part, May can't help but feel as though a terrible burden has been lifted from her. She's been fending for herself for so long that she has almost forgotten how it feels to have someone like a parent. Someone who genuinely cares about her well-being and can bear some of the weight of the world so she doesn't have to. With this comes a new feeling, one that had been dormant so long she had thought it gone forever. Forgiveness. Perhaps if she can be loved by someone else, she can learn to love herself again and let go of the guilt and grief weighing her down, allowing her to focus not on righting the wrongs of the past, but on building a better tomorrow for herself and her family. Having crossed this threshold at last, no more words are necessary, with May and Birch simply being together until the guard from before steps into the cell, his mighty Anna at his side as he barks at the girl that it's been long enough. So it's time to go. Instead of looking angry, Birch thanks the man for giving them this time together, and even tosses Mariana a couple of pieces of Pokemon food from his lab coat pocket. He then makes eye contact with May and in a soft voice urges her not to forget what they talked about, before giving her one last squeeze and allowing the guard to lead her away. Having no more business to attend to and certainly no desire to interact with their so-called teammates, May makes for the Grunt's barracks, figuring that she might as well try to get some rest since Archie mentioned an early departure. Crawling into one of the many hammocks, she quickly succumbs to the emotional toll of the day, with it dragging her down into sleep. This image takes shape in May's dreams, as she finds herself not sinking but falling through the open air, the ocean far below her. Looking around for anything that can save her, she only sees a crystalline spire rising from the sea to greet her. Its design is familiar but at the same time not, like a forgotten memory. Faster and faster she falls, as if the structure's trying to pull her into itself. Then just as she's about to touch the smooth crystal, she jerks awake.
It takes May a moment to get her heart rate back under control, and even when she has calmed down, the image of that crystalline spire stays with her, sitting uncomfortably on the edge of recollection. Knowing that there's no way she'll be able to get back to sleep with this on her mind, the daughter of Norman decides to go for a walk, figuring that a bit of fresh air will do her some good, as this room has become uncomfortably claustrophobic after the rushing winds of her dream. Not wanting to wake Swampert and Swablu, May heads for one of the many walkways that line the exterior of the base. And though the winds coming off the sea are as cold as a smoochum's kiss, she has to admit that the sparkling waters are beautiful in the pre-dawn light. However, all sense of beauty promptly shrivels when a voice May knows quite well expresses his own appreciation for the magnificence of the sea, causing the girl to peer further along the walkway until she spots Archie leaning against the railing. Coldly, she asks what he wants with her, but with an amused little chuckle, the Aqua boss retorts that he ought to be the one asking that, since she barged in on his favourite spot to watch the sunrise. eyes. Scowling, May says that she'll go then, but raising a hand, Archie tells her not to, saying that he knows she hates him, but really there's no reason they can't get along. As far as he's concerned, they're actually a lot alike. They're both ambitious, have a flair for the dramatic, and are willing to do what has to be done to get what they want. Angrily, May protests that they're nothing alike, but with a laugh that resembles the barking of a walrein, Archie smirks that the Buizel she faced in Rubello Town would beg to differ. Not that he's complaining. If anything, he's impressed, since he didn't think she had it in her, but now that he's seen her killer instinct, he's confident she's gonna win him that 5th ribbon today, and secure a spot in the grand festival.
Remembering Birch's words, May doesn't rise to the bait, instead asking her boss why exactly he cares about contests in the first place. With a smirk, Archie explains that it's quite simple. It's for the money. As his old mentor taught him, nothing great can ever be achieved without money. And when she's a top coordinator, she's gonna make him boatloads of it. Whether it's through merchandising, sponsorship deals, or just fluttering those little pretty eyelashes of hers and begging her fans to splash some cash. May feels sick at this thought, though she remains stone-faced as she asks what about their deal. Grinning widenly, Archie reassures the girl that he's a man of his word. Once she's a top coordinator, he'll help get her brother back. And who knows, maybe he'll even come work for Team Aqua too. Then they can do a touching family reunion special on Hoenn TV, which could spin off into its own talk show. This prospect does nothing to lessen the bile rising in May's throat. And when he sees this, Archie bursts out into a fit of laughter so intense that he stumbles backwards, while doubling over from mirth. Briefly, May envisions the Aqua boss tumbling over the railing and making a silent wish for him to fall, and to drown when no one's around to save him. But a moment later, this dream is crushed like so many others, as Archie strains back up. Wiping tears from his eyes, the bearded man asks if May really thought that once she got what she wanted, he was just gonna let her leave? Arceus, no. Hasn't she gotten it through her thick skull yet? He owns her, and he always will. And even if that was the case, where would she go? It's not like she and her brother can just set sail into the sunset. She's committed far too many crimes for that. So if anything, he's doing her a favor by letting her stay, since at least as a member of Team Aqua, she's got their rep to shield her.
This declaration leaves May speechless, as the true gravity of her situation kicks in. There really is no way out. Reading this existential horror in her eyes, Archie strolls forward, a smirk once more on his lips as he condescendingly pats her cheek, telling her to give him a smile. Since it's not all bad, he even got her a present for her final contest. He then drops a Pokeball in her hand, smiling that it's the Castform from the Weather Institute. Turns out he only needed a small sample of its DNA to decode all the data, so he figured he might as well give the little guy back to her, since she went to all the effort of catching it for him. Still dumbfounded, May just stares at the ball, but this muted response still gives Archie the cruel amusement he craves, and so strolling towards the doors back into the base, he instructs her to pull herself together, since their boat to Lily Cove leaves in an hour, and he expects to see her on it. With these parting words, Archie at last heads inside, leaving May alone to ponder her situation, a chill dread filling her that even the first rays of the new day's sun cannot thaw.
Max, Courtney, what's wrong? The voice of Maxie fills the Weather Institute's monitoring room as his face, now 10 times its usual size, looks down on them from a giant video screen. Thanks to the enlargement, Max can see more clearly than ever the concern Maxie holds for his subordinates. And this only makes the knot of shame in his stomach twist tighter. Maxie was counting on him to secure the data, and he failed. Stepping forth, Max prepares to give his account of what happened. But it seems Courtney has preempted this, as with her uninjured legs, she's able to take 2 steps forward before Max can even take 1, drawing their mentor's attention as she states that they failed their mission. A frown twists the corners of Maxie's lipless mouth as he calls this most disappointing. But Courtney isn't done, as with a wicked smile, she begins to give a highly biased account of recent events, laying the blame of their failure entirely at Max's feet, as she tosses around accusations such as dereliction of duty and disloyalty. Furiously, Max tries to interject, but in a calm voice, the Magma boss tells the boy not to interrupt, and that he will be allowed to give his version of events when Courtney is done. This just makes Max feel worse, as he can hear how disappointed Maxie is in him, and so he falls silent until he is at last allowed to speak.
Finally, the red-headed boss turns his eyes to Max, and still in that placid voice, he asks if there is anything he would like to add to Courtney's report, at which point the boy explodes that this failure wasn't his fault. He was just following their plan by challenging the Fortree gym, since he didn't know that May and her Aqua buddies would be here. From his side of the screen, Maxie's eyebrows raise infinitesimally. Courtney had not mentioned the boy's sister had been part of the strike team. That changes things. Adopting a consoling tone, Maxie tells his protege that of course he understands. He knows that Max would never knowingly jeopardize Team Magma's mission. However, here the boss's tone stiffens as he states that nonetheless, by failing this task, that is what he has done, since they needed that data. Fresh shame washes over Max at these words, and seeing this, Maxie tells the boy that there is no point dwelling on what cannot be changed. Now they need to move on and form a new plan. For that reason, he wants Max to meet him in Lily Cove, while Courtney will return to base and act as interim commander in his absence. Acknowledging these new orders, Max and Courtney sign off, then without another word to each other, go about their separate tasks. Stepping out of the monitoring room, Max is met by Bart, who asks if there is anything else he can do to repay Max and Courtney for helping save them from Team Aqua. Shaking his head, the son of Norman says he's done plenty already, his mood darkening by the second, as the disappointed look on Maxie's face plays over and over in his mind. Eventually he reaches the entryway, and when it is safe to do so, Max brings out Staraptor, who shows no more signs of defiance, as it lets him mount up, then lifts off and takes flight in the direction of Lily Cove. By the time Max lands outside the Pokemon Center, night has well and truly fallen. But thankfully, this is not an issue, as a moment later Maxie steps outside to greet his protege, ushering him inside while giving Staraptor a very wary side-eye. Upon seeing the closest thing he has left to a father, Max begins to apologize for his failure, but laying a hand on the boy's shoulder, Maxie smiles that it's quite alright. He's been reflecting on their conversation and has realized that Max is not to blame for what happened. His sister is. He still remembers how upset Max was after their encounter at the Petalburg gym, and then again when he saw her on TV, so it's only natural that her appearance at the Weather Institute caused him to be distracted. Unfortunately, they cannot risk further distractions, so he thinks it's time his young friend got some closure, and as it happens, he knows just how Max can get it.
The Lily Cove contest hall is buzzing with life when May steps inside to register with Archie by her side. This is the first time he has ever done this, and May has to wonder why he's chosen to accompany her to this particular contest. That is until she sees what has the other coordinators so excited. Hung throughout the lobby are banners promoting the top coordinator and Sutopolis gym leader Juan is coming out of retirement for a special appearance in today's contest. Looking over to Archie, May asks if he knew this was happening, and with a grin, the Aqua boss replies that of course he did. And better still, after May beats Juan with that new Castform of hers, she's gonna convince him to join her for an interview at the station. It'll be ratings dynamite. Something in the way Archie says this tells May that she doesn't want to know what will happen if she doesn't beat Juan. So instead she asks what she will do if Juan doesn't want to do an interview. Greasy grin only growing, Archie replies that he won't say no. Not after he's seen that crystal mark of hers. This only leaves May with more questions, like how Archie knows about the mark and why Juan would care. Seeing this in her eyes, Archie answers unprompted, explaining in a painfully condescending voice that Juan's Sutopolin, and they share blood with the people of the water. So if he's not at least a little bit interested in this relic from the time his ancestors ruled the seas, the Aqua boss will eat his bandana. Still unconvinced, May asks how he knows so much about this stuff, and Archie responds that he explored every avenue that might lead him to Kyogre, though this particular bit of knowledge comes from his old man who was obsessed with the people of the water. Suddenly, May is overcome with morbid curiosity at the thought of Archie's father. What sort of man could spawn a creature as vile as the Aqua boss? However, before she can ask such questions, they reach the reception desk, and Archie starts to speak with the attendant, enrolling May for the contest and stating that her chosen Pokemon will be Castform. When registration is complete, they're able to step away. May questions this decision, stating that if she's meant to beat someone like Juan, shouldn't she use one of her more experienced Pokemon like Swablu or Swampert? Unfortunately, Archie won't hear of this, telling May that it cost him a fortune to get his hands on that little blob, so now he wants some usage out of it. Scowling, May protests more adamantly, saying that she doesn't even know if Castform will listen to her, considering the circumstances in which she caught it. But refusing to hear dissent, Archie just snaps at her to figure it out, before storming away, his scowl plainly stating the unspoken part of his sentence, or else.
Seeing as how there's still a bit of time left before the appeal round is set to begin, May chooses to head out behind the contest hall to get some practice in with Castform. However, as she expected, the greyish blob won't even look at her, let alone follow her commands. Already at her wit's end thanks to Archie, the events of the Weather Institute, and her bad night's sleep, she snaps to the normal type to stop screwing around and listen to her. This startles Castform, so much that its big eyes go even wider, and as she looks into them, May sees fear, the same fear she feels around Archie, and at once she feels sick with herself. Slumping to the ground and cradling her knees, May apologizes to Castform, telling it that she didn't mean to yell. She's just really worried, since the Grand Festival's just around the corner. Unless she gets this ribbon, she might not be able to rescue her brother. Sensing the genuineness to these words, Castform floats a little closer, warbling something vaguely sympathetic, and taking this as her cue to go on, May explains her situation, including how it seems like even if she can achieve her goal, she will still remain a prisoner of Archie forever. This is something Castform can relate to, floating close enough to rest its cheek against the girl's leg, and as she sees this, she apologizes again, this time for taking it from the Weather Institute against its will, since she knows how painful it is to lose one's home. However, if Castform agrees to help her win this ribbon and the Grand Festival, then she promises to take it back home and release it. That way at least one of them can be free. Floating up from May's leg to be eye level with her, Castform gives a resolute nod, plainly accepting these terms, and this makes the daughter of Norman smile as she holds out a pinky to touch what she presumes are Castform's hands, formally forging their pact. Following this, Castform becomes much more receptive to May's instructions, its tricky nature making it a natural for contests, as it quickly helps May devise a simple but highly effective appeal performance. After running it through a couple of times, May and Castform at last head back into the contest hall, having heard the chimes signaling the start of the contest a little while ago. However, as she steps inside, May finds herself rooted to the spot by what she sees displayed on the hall's main television screen. Max, doing an appeal.
Rushing into the dressing room, May confirms what she saw in the foyer is correct, as the monitor displaying what is currently happening on stage clearly shows Max along with the Chinchou in the midst of a performance. Refusing to pass up another opportunity to see her brother, she goes to talk some sense into him. May dashes towards the stage, though before she can even reach the curtains, she is grabbed bodily by a security guard and held back as he sternly tells her to wait her turn. Urgently, May pleads with the guard to let her go, since that coordinator is her little brother and she needs to talk with him. But with the suspicious look, he thinks she's trying to sabotage a rival. The guard says that she can talk to him later backstage, but for now only the current performer is allowed on stage. Briefly, May considers bringing out one of her Pokemon and forcing the guard to let her pass, but that is something Archie would do, and so heeding his word, she heads back to the waiting area, endeavoring to corner Max the moment he comes off stage. However, to her surprise, Max does not return to the dressing room after his appeal, instead taking off in the opposite direction, and since May can't follow him across the stage, she is forced to give chase in a circuitous manner, allowing her brother more than enough time to vanish into wherever he's hiding. Feeling thoroughly dejected, May almost misses her own call to the stage, and it is only when another coordinator taps her on the shoulder and alerts her to the announcement that she actually manages to make an appearance before she is disqualified. Still a bit flustered, the girl then calls forth Castform, and lucky for her, its eyes are well and truly on the prize as it begins the routine they had planned together. Floating over to one end of the stage, Castform begins to charge up a weather ball, and once it's large enough, it fires it in a wide arc that will span the whole stage. At first, the orb is rather dull, being a simple normal type attack, though this is not a problem as once it reaches the first chord of the stage, Castform uses its second move, Hail. Suddenly, hailstones begin to fall across the battlefield, while both Castform and the bland ball of mist change shape, with the weather Pokemon adapting its snowy form, while the ball becomes a snowball. This elicits oohs and ahs from the audience who have never seen a Pokemon like this before, though as they soon will learn, Castform is far from finished. Once the snowball reaches the halfway point of its arc, Castform changes its move, going from Hail to Rain Dance, and likewise both it and the weather ball change as well, with the snowball becoming a sphere of water similar to a water pulse, a sight which makes May's stomach lurch, while Castform itself loses its puffy cloud coating in favor of a water droplet on its head. Like before, this wows a crowd who had no idea Castform had more than one transformation, though their excitement is still yet to reach its peak, as when the water orb has crossed 3/4 of the stage, Castform shows off its final weather effect, that being sunny day. Harsh sunlight then bathes the stage, drying up the rain and hail, while also giving Castform that orange orbed hood from the Weather Institute. At the same time, the weather ball undergoes just as rapid a shift, becoming a fireball just in time to be caught by Castform, who dashes across the stage, absorbing the orb into itself and taking on a bright glow, as if it might replace the sun as the hall's central source of light.
It is only now that Castform drops the sunny day, reverting to its base form and floating downwards to bow alongside May. This performance is met with thunderous applause as the judges add their praise, with Mr. Sukizo calling what he just saw remarkable, while Mr. Contesta admits that it was very impressive how May and Castform showed them 4 seasons in one day. Though the girl definitely hears a faint note of disapproval, which tells her that unsurprisingly, the man has not forgiven or forgotten Rubello, even if everyone else seemingly has. As a result, May's score is good, but not great, and so she waits with bated breath to see if she has made it to the battle round. Thankfully, the Lily Cove contest allows for 8 coordinators to advance, and this proves to be May's saving grace, as when the final face appears on the screen, it is hers. This is not the only good news, as Max is also moving on, having placed second under 1. And to make things even better, when the matchups are announced, May finds that she and her brother will be the first to face off. It seems that May's luck is really turning around, since now Max will have no choice but to show up and they can talk. Hopefully the public setting will stop him from going berserk like he did at the gym, and they can work through whatever lies Maxie has told him. Truthfully, she doesn't know what she'll do after that, but right now that hardly matters, as she needs to focus on getting Max to talk to her first. Soon the call comes through for the Petalburg siblings to make their way to the stage, and with a smile, May does as she's told, finding Max already there. From the center of the stage, Vivian Meridian tells the pair to begin, but before either trainer can bring forth a Pokemon, the screen that would normally have displayed the coordinators' faces and point totals suddenly changes to show security camera footage of the Weather Institute, forcing May and everyone else to watch her in horror as the Team Aqua raid is projected on the big screen. When the feed finally rolls around to May's capture of Castform, no one is in any doubt as to what has happened, with murmuring erupting through the audience, and it is only silenced when Mr. Contesta raises his voice to announce that in light of this damning new evidence, he is disqualifying May, and issuing her with a lifetime ban on competing in contests, effective immediately. As he says this, the security guard from before along with several Officer Jennies make their way onto the stage, cutting off May's escape route, and as the girl frantically looks around for a way out, she sees Max, who appears just as shocked as her at this turn of events. Unfortunately, she has no time to deal with this right now, bringing out all her Pokemon, and having Swablu and Castform keep their pursuers at bay, while Swampert uses Earthquake on the back wall to create an exit. Then when the way is clear, she and her Pokemon do the only thing they can do. They run.
From his side of the field, Max watches in stunned silence. He didn't plan for this, far from it. He entered the contest for 2 reasons. First, to crush May once and for all, and second, to face Juan. Now that his first objective has been stolen from him, and as he scans the crowd for any clue as who could have done this, his eyes fall on Maxie, who is seated in the front row, his hands tucking some sort of remote back into his pocket, as he now has a long wait ahead of him before the remaining semi-finalists are determined. Max gives his mentor a look that requests he meet him in the foyer before slipping away from the stage. As he had hoped, Maxie joins him a moment later, and in a confused voice, the boy asks why Maxie leaked the footage, just when he was about to get revenge on his sister. Looking subdued, Maxie says that he was simply acting out of concern for his protege and his Pokemon, since he only just learned something troubling about how May has won so many contests. He then pulls out a handheld device from his pocket and uses its screen to show Max the final moments of the Rubello contest, sparing no detail of Buizel's suffering. As a lover of Pokemon, Max is horrified. While pretending to feel otherwise, Maxie gravely nods that it seems May has fully embraced the evil ideologies of Team Aqua, having sunk so low as to torture an innocent Pokemon who got in her way. While he is sorry that Max didn't get a chance to get the closure he desires, there will be other opportunities. He just didn't want sweet little Chinchou getting hurt like Buizel. And now at least everyone knows May for the Snivy in the grass that she is. Still half dazed from what he just saw, Max nods, thanking Maxie for protecting his friend. While with a smile, the Magma boss calls it his pleasure, telling the boy that he can now focus on Juan, and reminding him of the idea they had to see if the Sutopless gym leader would be willing to treat their contest battle as a gym battle if they managed to meet somewhere in the bracket. Fortunately, it does not take long for this to come into fruition, as Max easily dispatches his semi-final opponent, while unsurprisingly, Juan does the same to his first two challengers. As a result, the final round of the Lily Cove contest is between Max and Juan, with Max using Chinchou and Juan bringing forth his Milotic. With its innate elegance and stage presence, Milotic is a natural in the contest format, but Chinchou is no slouch either. Its bubbly, extroverted personality making it a major crowd pleaser, a fact that isn't hurt by its clear status as a cute little underdog facing against a previous Grand Festival winner.
A moment later, the start of the match is called, and not wanting to waste a single second since they're on the clock, Max opens with an Electro Ball. Squealing happily, Chinchou begins manifesting the orb of electricity, though to it and Max's surprise, when the ball begins soaring towards Milotic, the mustachioed gym leader seems unfazed, casually calling for an Iron Tail. At once, a metallic sheen coats Milotic's tail, and as it does, the Electro Ball suddenly diverts, zeroing in on the improvised lightning rod. This seems to please Juan, as just by having Milotic move its tail back and forth, it is able to perform tricks with the Electro Ball, such as making it do loops or bob up and down. In turn, the crowd seemed delighted, laughing heartily at the display, while up on the main screen, Max's points take a heavy hit. Gritting his teeth at being used as the fall guy in a comedy routine, Max next calls for a water gun, but with the same ease, Juan has Milotic avoid this by slamming the captive Electro Ball into the stream of water, dissipating it. This further damages Max's prospects of victory, and seeing the frustration on the boy's face, Juan gives a genteel apology, saying that he hopes his young opponent isn't too upset, he merely wanted to give the audience a good show. A little petulantly, Max replies that what he wants is for Juan to battle him seriously, since his father always told him that Juan was one of the few who could challenge him for the title of Hoenn's strongest gym leader, a claim which intrigues the man, as he asks who Max's father is. With pride in his voice, Max replies that he's the son of Norman from the Petalburg gym, and for the sake of his father's reputation, he refuses to lose here. Adopting a sober expression, Juan nods that he was deeply saddened to hear of Norman's passing, before saying that if a more traditional battle is what the son of his former colleague desires, then so be it. As if changing costume, Juan's entire demeanor shifts, going from the laid-back persona of a showman to the rigid posture of a serious battler. Juan the coordinator has just been replaced by the Sutopolis gym leader. This time it is Juan who goes on the offensive, ordering a hydro pump, but as if in some odd inversion of how the match began, Max is now the one with an easy counter, having Chinchou take the hit while revealing its ability to be water absorb. Like with Max, this failure costs Juan heavily in the points department, but this is not the end of the young man's comeback, as with a grin, he tells Chinchou to try Electro Ball again. At once, the stream of water connecting Milotic and Chinchou becomes heavily electrified, its currents racing outwards and directly into Milotic's mouth. With a screech, the sea serpent is blown back by the super effective move, and as smoke comes off it, Juan asks if it's okay. Nodding, Milotic returns to its full height, while with an approving nod, Juan compliments Max, saying he is truly Norman's son, as not only has he neutralized some of Milotic's strongest moves, but he has also found a way to exploit his partner's biggest weakness. Buen trabajo!
Grinning, Max promises that he is far from done, but before he can call for another attack, Juan orders Milotic to use Twister. Whipping its tail around rapidly, Milotic creates a gale, which quickly transforms into a tornado just in time to be sent crashing into Chinchou. At such high speeds, the little water electric type has no chance to get away, and with the cry, finds itself being sucked into the vortex and sent buffeting around. For anyone else, this would be a hopeless situation, especially how this nearly depletes Max's remaining points. However, Max isn't just anybody, and so using that tactical mind of his, he devises one last gambit that might help him pull out a win in the limited time he has. Calling out to Chinchou, Max orders it to start charging an electro ball, though not just by using the power in its internal battery, but by drawing on the kinetic energy of its flight. Squeaking its understanding, Chinchou leans into the tornado, allowing it to carry it faster and faster, all the while gathering power for its attack. Soon this energy turns into a yellow glow, which quickly becomes an aura. Then a bubble of electricity which expands further and further until it has eclipsed the mouth of the twister. However, this is not the end, as when Chinchou adds in its own power to this, the orb expands until it looks like a small glowing moon, which promptly becomes too much for the tornado to handle, dissipating the wind spout as it pummels down towards its originator. Now it's Milotic's turn to be helpless, and as the massive electro ball strikes the dazzling serpent, light erupts in all directions, brightly illuminating the entire contest hall, just in time for the clock to strike 0. All eyes then turn to the display monitor, as with neither Chinchou nor Milotic having fainted from the battle, the victor will be determined by who has the most points remaining. It is a close thing, maybe too close to call, with both battlers only having a slither of the original points left. But when the face of the winner and his Pokemon flash on screen, Max is shocked to see that it is him. Beaming, the boy runs to hug his Chinchou, not even caring about the static shock he receives from the leftover kinetic energy. Smiling as well, Mr. Contesta then presents Max with the Lily Cove ribbon, while with a flourish and a bow, Juan shakes the hand of Norman's son, slyly depositing a rain badge in his palm as he does. However, the best congratulations of all comes after Max has left the stage, as waiting for him is Maxie, who radiates pride as he lays a hand on his protege's shoulder. Smiling, Max thanks his mentor, though Maxie is not done, as with a smile he tells the boy to follow him, as he has a special surprise in store.
The sun is close to setting by the time May and Swampert are finally able to rest. Due to Lily Cove being a port city, finding an escape route had been fairly straightforward, with Swampert carrying its trainer out into the open ocean, though even this had not been easy, as several of the Jennies had possessed water types to give chase. Thankfully, none could match Swampert's speeds, though the act of fleeing had taken its toll both physically and mentally, and so May had set to work finding somewhere they could stop and catch their breath. Unsurprisingly, few such places existed in the middle of the ocean, but eventually the girl had spotted a large rocky outcrop jutting from the water, similar to the one Team Aqua's base had been built on, and this had been good enough for Swampert, with the mudfish swimming as fast as it could, then scaling the rock face to carry itself and May to the top. Now at last the pair are able to get their bearings, with trainer and Pokemon alike stretching out on the warm stone as May contemplates her next move. After what happened at the contest hall, it seems that her days as a coordinator are done, but with her no longer able to earn ribbons, there isn't much point in her returning to the Aqua base. However, if she runs, Archie will no doubt send a squad after her, just like he sent Isabel when she first tried to defect. Fleetingly, May thinks of her companion. Maybe she should seek her out, as the woman is the closest thing she has to a friend at this point. But with how broken her spirit is, she might just turn her over to Archie like they did with Professor Birch. Poor Professor Birch. She needs to find a way to save him too, since she refuses to leave him in Archie's clutches.
All of these thoughts swirl in her head until something comes along to take precedence, that being a large shadow passing overhead. Worriedly, May looks up, her blood running cold as she sees a pair of Pokemon, each bearing riders. Though when the pair touch down, they are not Officer Jenny's as May had expected, but Max and a man she's never met in person, but from his appearance can assume is Maxie. It seems that Max is just as surprised to see her sister as she is to see him, asking the Magma Mastermind what they're doing here, but with a believable facsimile of compassion, Maxie responds that he felt so bad for messing up Max's reunion with his sister that he tracked her down for his protege. Now he can do whatever it is he needs to get closure. At this last word, Swampert lunges forward, having heard the same undertone of evil that May did, and so chose to protect its trainer. Urgently, May calls for Swampert to stop, not wanting to fight, but the mudfish doesn't seem to hear her. Its orange eyes lock squarely on Maxie as it charges at him. This showing of aggression only amuses the redhead, as with a lazy flick of his wrist, he brings out his Camerupt, whose bulk almost triples that of Swampert, bringing the water ground type to an abrupt halt when they collide. Staggering back in a daze, Swampert's unable to capitalize on either Camerupt's 2x ground weakness or its quad water weakness. Though the same cannot be said for the Eruption Pokemon, who draws in the last remnants of the waning sunlight before firing off a devastating solar beam. Still stunned, Swampert is in no state to avoid this attack, and is sent crashing back into a chunk of rock. May runs over to check on her friend, wishing she had thought to stock up on medicine before leaving the base this morning. Coldly, Max asks, "What's wrong? Is it only okay when she and her allies are the ones brutalizing Pokemon, but not the other way around?" Anguish in her voice, May demands to know what her brother is talking about, but in tones laced with venom. Max spits back that he knows what she did in Rubello Town and the Weather Institute, his voice rising as hysteria overtakes him. From behind, Maxie smiles in earnest, pleased to see that Max is reacting precisely as he hoped he would. Through meticulous trial and error, he has assessed the best way to stoke the boy's rage. And now all that's left is to conduct a field test on if he can successfully weaponize it. The girl will be an ideal subject, as not only does Max already hold a grudge against her, but in removing her, the boy will finally be rid of the last lingering tie to his past, completing his transformation into the unwavering loyal instrument Maxie has been grooming him to be. All he has to do is give him that last push.
Speaking at last, Maxie encourages Max in his anger, calling this his chance to get justice for his parents, and to punish the disloyal sister who chose their murderers over her own family. Does he not owe this to Norman and Caroline? These words strike a chord with Max, sending him into a fervor as he calls forth Blaziken, though unfortunately for Maxie, they do likewise to May, who rises to her feet, angrily declaring that the Magma Boss is a liar. She never betrayed her family, and she only joined Team Aqua to save Max from Maxie. This slander against his mentor incenses Max, but before he can react, May leaps forward, taking her brother's hands and looking directly into his eyes. Holding nothing back, she pleads with him to stop. Stop with the fighting, stop with the vengeance. It isn't helping anyone. If he really wants to honor their parents, then he should come home with her. They can rebuild the gym, and sure it won't be like it was before, but it'll still be good. They'll be a family again. And that's all that matters. It's not too late. He just has to stop letting the past hold him back so they can focus on making a better future together. As May finishes speaking, Max finally meets her eyes, the last rays of the sun shining on his face as he says that yeah, she's right. It's time to let go of the past and focus on the future. At these words, May allows herself to smile, releasing her hold on Max's hands in preparation to wrap him in a hug. Then, the sun passes below the waves, and as darkness falls over the boy's face, his expression changes, hardens, and in a soft voice, he utters 2 words: Sky Uppercut. At once, May feels something ram into her stomach, the powerful foot of Max's Blaziken as it sends her hurtling over the edge of the rock face, all the air knocked from her lungs. Had the kick not done so, the landing surely would have, as she hits the water hard, and when her instincts make her gasp for air, all she finds is the salty burn of seawater flooding every orifice. Desperately she tries to swim, but between the fuzziness in her brain and the pain rippling through her body, there is nothing she can do as darkness claims her, while she sinks deeper beneath the waves. Up on land, Swampert tries to get to its feet. It has to save its friend. It has to! But after the injury it took from that solar beam, even one wobbling step is too much for its battered body, causing it to crash back into the dirt. Meanwhile, Staraptor has no such issue, acting with decisive vigor as it lets out a shriek of abject horror, then dives into the water after May. Watching it go, Maxie has to fight off a laugh. The girl's already dead, so all that blasted bird will achieve through this gesture is to reunite with its master at the bottom of the ocean. Worthless brute. It was hardly worth the effort of returning to the ship to retrieve it. But no matter, since he has something far more valuable than a gym leader's Pokemon. A perfect puppet with nothing left in its heart but the desire to see his master's will carried out. This at last triggers the laugh, and as Maxie strolls forward, kicking the Aqua Swampert into the water as he does, he lays a hand on Max's back, patting it gently, and telling the boy that he did what had to be done, However, he's afraid that this was only the beginning, as now that Max's demons are dealt with, they can focus on their real work, reviving Groudon and saving the world. Max says nothing to this, merely nodding, his eyes locked squarely on the place where May fell.
And that's where we'll leave the mid-season finale of What If Team Aqua sponsored May.
As usual, the next part will be on my channel, though there will be one change that we think you should know.
Moving forward, this series will be titled What If Team Magma sponsored Max, so keep an eye out for that title if you want to see the fallout from this part.
Also, don't forget to subscribe to all the channels connected to the GSA universe, as it really is a team effort, and we need your support if we're going to grow this into the #1 Pokemon What If.
But that's enough blathering from us, so we'll sign out the best way we know how. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you as the journey continues.